This is pretty awesome. Let's play this clip of let's talk about Tucker Carlson. All right, because I've got to leave in about 5 or 10 minutes. So listen, I have been the subject of somebody digging through my tweets, finding a tweet that used satire as making a point that Roman Polanski, I'll get very specific about it because it was a very specific tweet, that Roman Polanski should not be forgiven for skipping the country after being convicted of statutory rape, skipping his sentencing hearing because he was a good filmmaker. There were people at the time who were circulating a petition. This is about 10 years ago now. And I was responding to it. Now, to be fair, I was satirical in the way that I responded to that. So I made a satirical comment, which was, I don't care about Polanski, but if my daughter is ever raped, I hope it's by a much older man who has a great sense of mise en scène. Now, most people, I would say, I want to say who are English speakers, but I would think even people who speak English as a second or third language and have any sense of the way that language is spoken and have met normal people, even if they had never met me or heard me, would know that that's very hard to believe that someone meant that literally, that they want someone who has an ability to create a good scene in the context of directing a movie, would be a requisite to want their child raped. That would be a weird thing for people to assume. And certainly if people knew me, they would know that that was a satirical remark. And it's not like I don't have literally thousands of hours of on air talking that would reinforce that point.
Who's laughing now, Sam?
Which is why ultimately, even though Cernovich got me fired initially, ultimately I was hired back. Now, Tucker Carlson has a little bit of problem with audio that is surfaced of his. And that is because it's not inconsistent. It is not a shock to the system to imagine that Tucker Carlson is a misogynist, that Tucker Carlson is dismissive of the ability to be raped if you're in a marriage. That's the thing I find most disturbing. There's a bunch of stuff that's come out where he said, nasty thing and derogatory things about women that, shock jock stuff and, but we're not talking about, well, back in the 50s, 1950s, people had a very weird notion of like, if you were married, that you were sort of the chattel of your husband. This is in 2006, 2009, where Tucker Carlson is talking about a guy who was a cult leader who would arrange marriages between people in their late 20s and women below the age of 17. And Tucker Carlson is saying that guy shouldn't have gone to jail. The guy who actually married her should go to jail. But then he says something about sort of excusing a rapist that I find really problematic. This is the most problematic of all the stuff that he says. Here let's play this.
Well, actually, he's not in prison for that. Warren Jeffs didn't marry underage girls.
No, he's in prison for facilitation of child rape.
Whatever the hell that means.
That means
he's in prison. He's in prison because he's weird and unpopular, and he has a different lifestyle that other people find creepy.
No, he's an accessory to the rape of children. That is a felony, and a serious one at that.
What do you mean an accessory? He's like got some weird religious cult where he thinks it's okay to, marry underage girls. But he didn't do it. Why wouldn't the guy who actually did it, who had sex with an underage girl, he should be the one who's doing life? the rapist in this case has made a lifelong commitment to live and take care of the person. So it is a little different. I mean, let's just be honest about it.
That's the part that I find the most disturbing of all the things, and I'm not going to harp on the other stuff, but the idea, the rapist in this case has made a lifelong commitment to live and take care of the person, so it's a little different. The idea that rape cannot exist in the context of a marriage in 2009 is sick. Never mind the fact that you're talking about a 16-year-old girl who may not, we don't let them vote. Some states you have to be 16 and have to drive. You can't work, I think, a certain amount of hours. I mean, there's a whole host of things that we don't let 16-year-olds do because we agree that they don't necessarily have, broadly speaking, as a default, enough life experience to make reasoned decisions on this. We don't allow them to drink alcohol. In states that pot is legal, we don't allow them to smoke pot. The idea that we would allow them to say, it's okay to a rapist as long as you're going to take care of me or whatever it is. I mean, this is just sort of sick stuff.
Yeah, there's an extremely high bar for them to be even emancipated from their parents.
And what's even worse is that Tucker is sort of poo-pooing this stuff. Instead of just coming out and saying, I was wrong, he's actually sort of, I think, some way defending his comments as being a long time ago. Is that, where is he? Here he is. He's tweeting out, just received the following comment. Okay, so here it is. All must be attributed to Tucker Carlson. There's a statement that he made to a reporter. Media Matters caught me saying something naughty.
Some things. He should have said something.
Something naughty on a radio show more than a decade ago. Rather than express the usual ritual contrition, how about this? I'm on television every weeknight for live for an hour. If you want to know what I think, you can watch. Anyone who disagrees with my views is welcome to come on and explain why. I'll be happy to go on Tucker Carlson's show and discuss why I think it's disgusting, the idea that he is excusing what we have decided is rape in this country based upon the rapist's willingness to take care of that person for the rest of their life, or a promise at the very least that I'll take care of you. But what's really funny is that Tucker Carlson, the idea that something that happened more than a decade ago, and I think 2009 was not really more than a decade ago, but maybe a month or two, he also seems to think that it's problematic in terms of Joe Biden. With Joe Biden's comments from decades ago. Here it is. It's Biden's past comes back to haunt him. And
he's foiling himself with his own logic here.
Now, I personally have an issue with what Biden has said in the past in terms of policies, in terms of some of his rhetoric, and particularly in terms of women, but also in terms of banking and in terms of antitrust, civil rights and whatnot. But I'm at least, my defense for that tweet was not that it was 9 or 10 years ago. My defense was, it's a piece of satire. It's quite obvious that I am against people apologizing for rape. And he's not even bothering to make that comment because he can't.
I'm perfectly happy to go on Tucker Carlson's show and explain to him that Pizzagate was apparently a giant act of projection.
Right. And I will also say this, that I don't know if Fox should fire him, because I think it's perfectly consistent with Fox News to have that type of attitude towards women. It was basically their business practices, as far as I can tell, and there's no reason to believe that they've made any change in their perspective towards women. And so, Fox News can take care of their own.
It's weird. There's a couple times in these clips, 2 different times, where he mentions, like, this rape isn't like a woman being pulled off, a housewife being pulled from the street. Like, there's one where he's talking about sex workers, how it's like, it's different if you rape a sex worker, because he says it's a little more complicated than if some, housewife claims she was pulled off the street and raped. And then he also said this about the Jeffs thing, is like,
The what thing?
About the Warren Jeffs, this
right.
guy who was with the children marriages. He's like, I'm just telling you that arranging a marriage between a 16-year-old and a 27-year-old is not the same as pulling a stranger off the street and raping her.
Right. This is the attitude that has permeated the right, the notion of actual rape, the idea that there are relationships that a man and a woman can have where the man is incapable of committing rape because of their relationship. The woman has tacitly given preemptive an okay to have sex with me whenever you want under any conditions, because I've agreed to X, Y, or Z, because I've agreed that you can pay me for sex, or because I've agreed to be your wife. There, the man has total license. That person becomes their chattel.
And by the way, like, this problem is not exclusive to creepy sex cults. Like, there are plenty of states that will make an exception to the minimum age of marriage or even consent if the girl in question is pregnant and the parents sign off on it. So, depending what kind of parents you get, either this is prosecuted as a crime or you are just legally signed over to your abuser.